following announcement has been paid for by the new Howell order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So last week, I was willing to admit, and I came to grips with the fact that I jumped the gun on Eric Bieniemy. I was very aggressive in my approach. I denounced him as the potential offensive coordinator of the future, but not just the offensive coordinator, but the head coach. If you can't do the offensive coordinator job, then you can't be the head coach here, right? And I set what were probably unrealistic expectations out of the gate for him. He's starting to meet the expectations. He's not there yet, but he's starting to meet the expectations that I had set for him out of the gate now, right? He's starting to grow into the role, which is, it's what I should have expected. And I don't know if Eric Bieniemy is necessarily head coach material in this league because of his nature and how he gets his message across. The new age athlete isn't built a lot of times. Not all of them are the same, but a lot of the new age athletes aren't built to deal with someone yelling at you a ton. And that's not all Eric Bieniemy, but a lot of him is being demonstrative, somewhat in your face, abrasive. And I don't know if that's a style that can win in the long run consistently in this league. You got to love up on your players, and tough love is okay, but you got to love up on your players sometimes too. And he does that. And so I'm not sure if it will or won't work, but I do know this is a results-based business. And if you get results, none of that other shit matters, right? The best example of that is the greatest coach in NFL history, Bill Belichick. The Patriot way was not a way that a lot of guys embraced. And after the fact, a lot of guys left there and said, hey, Belichick was cool, but I was there because of 12. I was there because of Brady. I knew that if Brady was under center, I had a chance to win a Super Bowl championship. So I was willing to put up with all the other shit, the quizzes, the not speaking to guys in the hallway and not acknowledging players, embarrassing guys in front of the team if you didn't know what you were supposed to know, right? Like you were in high school. Guys were willing to put up with that shit because winning is the ultimate goal in this league. I think Eric Bieniemy can be a head coach. And I think that's a discussion that I am now willing to start the process of having, should this continue, this being what I saw from him on Sunday, what I saw from him against Philadelphia the week prior, and then just this continuing to happen moving forward. If he can stabilize this offense and get it to be more consistent, to have more variety, to run the football more consistently, to put us in better positions to succeed. That's why the third down numbers are up the last 2 weeks. It's not a coincidence. And I know a lot of people are just going to look exactly at the offensive line and say, hey, he would have been doing this from the jump if the offensive line wasn't a sieve. And to you, I say, I can't argue with him being able to do more had the offensive line given him more opportunities. But you've seen a change in the way he's approached things the last 2 weeks. I think the offensive line and the changes kind of go hand in hand, not just the offensive line allowing him to do more. I think it's the offensive line has allowed a little bit more, but he's made it easier on them too by running the football under center, by throwing screens, by throwing quick game. He's made it easier on the offensive line. But then when they've dropped back and they've had to have 5 or 7 step drops, the offensive line is held up, and that helps. But that's not the uncomfortable and the unreasonable conversation. I'm ready to have that. I've been running. I'm running sprints, 40-yard dashes away from this uncomfortable and somewhat unreasonable conversation, but I'm running no more. Let's have it now. Let's get it out of the way because I don't want to keep doing this season. And I don't think I will have to because I think the season will play itself out. Things will go the way that they're supposed to go. Not the way that they're supposed to go, that they usually go. And then all of this becomes a moot point. But because we did win and it's November and here we go again, people are getting excited, Let's have the conversation now because I don't want to keep having, because the comment that I saw the most repeated in Monday's episode's comment section is the following. If we go to the playoffs, is Ron Rivera back next season? That's not something that I'm really trying to even have a conversation about, right? I've been running and running and running. Like, because I'm like, first of all, it's not going to happen. This is why. So the unreasonable portion of this conversation is we're not going to make the playoffs, right? That's the unreasonable part of this conversation. Do you know what it's going to most likely take for us to have that happen? Do you understand what lies ahead of us? Have you seen a team that's capable of going on the road and beating Seattle? Maybe. Okay, I'll give you that one. Maybe. I don't. The team that I saw last week isn't going on the road and beating Seattle. Okay? Have you seen a team this year that's capable of beating Dallas twice? Have you seen a team, and I'm not afraid of the Cowboys at all, and I know it's very, very possible that we could go right into Jerry's world on Thanksgiving and disrupt their entire Thanksgiving day, right? But I also understand that it's very possible that we go in there and we get our brains bashed in too. Have you seen a team that is capable of stopping that Dolphins offense and scoring more points than they will on us? Have you seen a team that's capable of beating San Francisco? Again, 49ers haven't looked that hot of late. They're still better than us, right? You know, Dolphins still better than us. We're going to see a Jets team, unlike everybody else in the division. We're going to see a Jets team with Aaron Rodgers. He'll be back by the time we get to the Jets. We won't get Zach Wilson. Are we overcoming all of this to somehow manage to win 9 games? Because I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. We had a chance and we blew it by losing to teams like the Giants and the Bears. So to me, this is an unreasonable conversation because you're not winning. It's going to take 9 games minimum. You're not getting in with 8 wins. You have to have a winning record in this NFC that all of a sudden is a lot tougher than we thought it was going to be. We didn't expect the entire NFC South, excluding Carolina, to be competent football teams. But the Buccaneers are competent, the Saints are good enough, and the Falcons aren't going to go away, especially now that they've inserted Taylor Heineke into the lineup. They're not going to go away. We left the Vikings for dead. Well, they're alive and they're kicking. I don't think they're going to last without Kirk Cousins, but they're alive and they're kicking now, right? They're not dead yet. Seattle isn't going anywhere. We know this to be a fact. We know how good San Francisco is. They'll get back on track. All of a sudden, the NFC is a much better conference at the back end than we expected. So any ideas of getting into this thing with 8 wins is dead now. Somebody's going to get to 9 looking at that 7 seed. Do you really think we're going to get to 9? We got to win 5 games. We put ourselves in this position. We should be 6-3 right now. Got no excuses losing at home to the Bears and to a bad Giants football team that only scored 14 points. You got no excuses. You put yourself in this position. If you would have told me, hey, you just need 3 more games to get to 9, and we were 6-3 right now, I'd say, okay, we can do that. We can find 3 more dubs somewhere in there. I'm not sure you can find 5. So I think this is an unreasonable conversation, right? However, while it's unreasonable and unlikely, it is one that I think we have to have. Because what if? And you know, if is that's the biggest 2-letter word. A wise man once told me, if is the biggest 2-letter word in the dictionary. This is an uncomfortable conversation because we want change. We want different. And if Ron wins, if Ronald gets it done, and this is so everyone kept saying in the comment section, if we get to the playoffs, I don't think getting to the playoffs is enough, first and foremost. I think you have to get to the playoffs and you have to win a game. while you're there in order for those guys to be back next season. I don't think just getting to the playoffs. And I get it, two different sports. Doc Rivers had a ton of chances. It's a little bit different in the NBA, but they got to the playoffs. They won a series, and then they got eliminated, and they fired Doc Rivers. So this owner here, Josh Harris, not afraid to fire a guy, even if they get to the playoffs and win a game. But this is the NFL. It's a little bit different. I could see a scenario in which Ronald and company are back next season on a very short leash, should they make it to the postseason and upset somebody. And if you get to the 7 seed, that means you're on the road against one of the two best teams in football. You're either going on the road and you're playing Philadelphia if they don't somehow become the number 1 seed, or you're going on the road and you're probably playing against the San Francisco 49ers. Those are the two best teams in the conference, I believe. And I think the 49ers will bear that out. By the time this season's done, they'll be right up there with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jockeying, and that game that they'll play here in a few weeks will determine who's going to be your number 1 seed more likely than not. That's what I ultimately think, because Philadelphia's going to lose some more games. I don't see them finishing this season, 16-1. They're going to lose 2 or 3 more games, especially if their defense plays the way that they've been playing this season. They got to figure some shit out defensively. We'll talk about that when we get to around the NFC East. But that means you went on the road to Philadelphia, or you went on the road to San Francisco, and you won a football game. That's a hell of a task to accomplish. And we would have been in both buildings. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that game against San Francisco late in the season is in Santa Clara, if I'm not mistaken. I know we played them out there last year. We might be going back out there again this year. Let me think. Seattle, we're playing that whole division. We played Seattle. We're going to play Seattle in Seattle. And we're going to play the Rams in L.A. So that game against the 49ers will be at home. So we wouldn't have gone to Santa Clara this year, but we went last year. And we would have already seen the 49ers, but not in their building. We've seen the Eagles in their building already. And we know we can go in there, and we competed like hell. And that was the one of the 2 games. We should have won the first one. The second one, we had our chances. And, had we converted 4th and 1 and went on, we would have won that game. But the second one felt like the one that was there for the taking, because literally you had the football with a decision to make to win the football game, and we chose to tie the game instead of going for the win, right? We were never in that position in the second game. We had the football in a tie ball game, but there's still tons of time left, and, we didn't get it done. So the one in Philadelphia felt like the one that was there for the taking. We should have beat them twice, though, if we're being honest. But the one in Philadelphia, the first one, I told you, I'm comfortable in Philly. That home environment in Philadelphia doesn't move me. I'm not afraid of going into the link. So could that happen? Absolutely. But again, I don't even see this team getting to the playoffs. But let's just have the conversation, because it's uncomfortable. Because we want change. We're sick of the slow starts. We're sick of Ron with his arms folded on the sidelines, allowing challengeable plays to go unchallenged. If not for James Smith-Williams this week, probably don't get the challenge, right? We're sick of Ron and his excuses as to why this team wasn't prepared for a Bears team at home or a Giants team on the road. We're sick of him not answering questions and reverting back to the quarterback and his development, as if that's a blanket statement that you can use for any question, no matter what the question is. Like, at this point, we're done with the same rhetoric over and over again. We've seen this movie enough times that we don't want another sequel, okay? Look, by show of hands, who needs another Rush Hour? I don't. I think they're going to make another one, though, but I'm good. The third one was so far-fetched and so way out there that I'm like, okay, you're running out of shit. I'm good, right? I don't need another year of Ron Rivera, right? I don't need him. And remember, what comes back with Ron Rivera is also important to acknowledge. Bringing Ronald back means you're bringing back Martin Mayhew, Marty Herney, Jack Del Rio, because he's not going to make changes with that group unless the ownership says, hey, okay, Ron, we'll work with you here. Here's what you have to do, though. you're going to have to fire Jack Del Rio and get us a real defensive coordinator. We love Eric Bieniemy, love what he's done, think he's done fantastic work with Sam. We want him back, but you're going to have to fire Jack Del Rio and get yourself a real defensive coordinator. They're not going to do that. I just don't see it. If you bring back Ronald, the whole crew comes back. And that means with all this draft capital that we just acquired, you're letting the guys that we don't trust to make selections to build this team yet again. Again, that goes against every single fiber of our being, right? That goes against every principle that we stand for in terms of wanting to build this the right way. If you bring in a new general manager, he gets to start with a clean slate, essentially, outside of Sam Howell, right? Which every team that gets a new GM, there are core players that are there when you get there that you understand these guys are a part of why we're going to turn this thing around. Sam would be a part of that, along with Terry McLaurin and Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, maybe Cam Curl, and several others. Sam Cosmi, some of those kinds of guys are going to be the guys you look at and say, hey, they're a part of us turning this around. Right? But the most important thing is this guy's going to have a chance to come in here with a boatload of picks, 5 in the first 3 rounds. And he's going to get to do whatever it is he feels is necessary, whether it's package up picks to move up and get one elite player, move back, acquire more picks, throw more darts at the dartboard, whatever your philosophy is. You may be a Seattle Seahawks type of GM where you come in here and you want more picks. You don't want less. So you're willing to allow somebody who wants the 35th overall pick that you got from Chicago in the Montez Sweat trade, right? You may allow somebody to come up and give you 3 more picks for that pick. You know, let me get 45 because I can move back. There are players that I like that are going to be there. Let me get 45. Let me get 66. And let me get 79 from you for 33, right? Or, 45, 66, and let me get 92, right? And you want more picks. And you end up taking that pick and parlaying it into an additional 2 picks. Whatever the case may be. That GM is going to have the ability to do whatever it is he feels like is necessary to help this team get back to where it needs to be. And faster rather than slow. Right? If Ronald is back, you're asking the same group that we don't have any confidence in building this roster to go out and make picks, which is what we don't want. There's a lot that's fundamentally wrong with Ronald and company returning next year. With that said, is it impossible that it happens? Because I don't know where the Harris group is on this. I firmly believe he's already fired. He's going to have to change their minds. He's fired already. And so is, Jack Del Rio and, Marty Herney and Martin Mayhew and the front office brass. All those guys are fired already. They'd have to go on some ridiculous run. And a lot of you see it coming. I don't know how, but I've said this before. I'll say it again. These ridiculous runs usually happen when we don't see them coming. But in order for us to go on a win streak, you have to go to Seattle and win. You then have to come back home, beat the Giants. Not an impossible task, okay? Then you have to go to Dallas on Thanksgiving and beat the Cowboys, right? Then you have to come back home and try to beat the Dolphins before hitting your bye week. Do you really see that happening? Even if there's a hiccup in there somewhere and you lose one of those games and win the rest of them. Where are you going to do that at? I don't see how that happens. I damn sure don't see this defense slowing down the Miami Dolphins at all whatsoever. Now, there's a lot of time between now and that game, and anything could happen. We could get lucky, and something could happen to Tyreek Hill or Tua, and it's a different football team. But that's not likely, and I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for that. If it happens, I'm definitely going to take it. I take all handouts. I don't turn any help down. But the reality of the situation is we're not going to be favored in any of these games coming up outside of the Giants game at home. And that might scare some of you more than any of the other games because we don't play up past the level of competition a lot of times. We'll play up to the level of a good football team. We've done it multiple times this season. But we also have shown the ability under Ron Rivera since he's gotten here, and it hasn't changed, to play down to the level of competition and sometimes even lower than that and lose to them. I don't see a way in which Ronald and company are back. The only way, and as I've said to you guys before, they're already fired. The Bears game, the Giants game, and then look at the home crowd against the Eagles. To me, that was the final nail in the coffin, looking around the stadium and seeing the disinterest of the fan base. Just keep in mind, 7 weeks prior, that stadium was filled up with screaming burgundy and gold faithful in week 1 against Arizona. Keep that in mind. Sellout. And it wasn't a bunch of Arizona Cardinals. I get it. It's the Cardinals. They don't travel well. Who's coming to see Arizona anyway, right? I get that. It's always going to be different when it's an NFC East team. There's always going to be Cowboys fans, Giants fans, Eagles fans infiltrating FedEx Field. Just like when we go play those teams, our fans show up at those games. Not as much as they show up here, right? But also understand that DC is a transient town. DC is a place where, you know, it's a melting pot because of the military and the government. And so there's a lot of different fan bases that already reside here and call it home. Also, understand that FedEx has always been one of the easiest tickets to get your hands on because we haven't been any good. That doesn't stop the Giants fans from packing their stadium. They've been awful ass for just as long as we have. That doesn't stop their fans from showing up and screaming and giving their team a home field environment. But you know what? They haven't been through as much as we have. And I think all of that is being taken into consideration. You want this fan base to be back. You've taken steps to get them back in the building, to get them rooting for your team again, to show up in the stands. You want them back, you're going to have to give them change. And the only way that that doesn't occur is, I'm not even sure, and I've gone back and forth with this, because I'm not even sure one playoff win is good enough. I think it would be. I think that, to me, is the baseline where it starts. This team has to get into the playoffs, and not only get into the playoffs, win a game. That's where you start the conversation, to me, at least. Getting to the playoffs, Ron is still fired. I don't care if we lose that game by 1 point. He's still fired. So is Martin Mayhew, Marty Herney, Jack Del Rio, and pretty much the entire staff. Everybody's gone. With the exception of maybe Eric Bieniemy. And that's another conversation that I want us to have is, what do you do with Eric Bieniemy? I think that's a conversation for another day. Maybe we'll have it next Tuesday, right? But I don't know what happens if you win 2 playoff games. At that point, aren't you obligated to bring him back? Like, if you get to the NFC Championship game, it's one thing to get to the divisional round. But getting to the NFC Championship game would require you to beat the 2 best teams in the conference. Understanding that you're the 7th seed, you'll get the 2 seed, and if you beat the 2 seed, the 1 seed coming off the bye is waiting on you. And if you're able to beat the 2 and the 1 seed, how is that coaching staff not back next year? It's almost impossible for them not to be back. I don't know the last coach that took his team to a championship game and wasn't back the following season. That's a unique set of circumstances, as far as I'm concerned. That's where it gets to a situation where you go, what the F, bro? What are we doing here? Because I don't think you can fire him at that point. And then Ron's whole rationale will be, I told you we just needed a quarterback. And that's what he's probably been selling to Josh Harris this entire time. Like, hey, I know you're just getting here. I know you've seen what my body of work has been here in Washington. We haven't had a winning season, yada, yada, yada. But I'm telling you, I just need a quarterback. And if you give me time to prove to you that Sam Howell not only is the quarterback, but he can win here, I can win with him. That's the dream he's selling to Josh Harris. Or at least if I were Ron Rivera, that's what I'd be selling to him. Because all you got to do is look at the quarterback situations he's dealt with since he's been here. And it's not for a lack of trying it. You can hate Ron all you want. But Ron has tried to get us a real quarterback in here. Nobody wanted to come here. And I don't blame anybody for wanting to avoid Washington. He tried to get Russell Wilson. He tried to get Matthew Stafford. He tried to get Aaron Rodgers. None of those guys wanted to come here. Why would they? So he was left with Carson Wentz, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and the likes. Alex Smith. Like, this is what he had to deal with. 4 different starters in 2020, 3 different starters in 2021, 3 different starters in 2022. That's what he's dealt with since he's gotten here. Some of it his own doing, right? But still, this year, if they get it done, and they got one quarterback, and Sam, he's already proven to me, and we'll talk more about Sam here in a second, what it is. And Sam's, and here's what may be different this year. In past years, when we go on these runs, it's usually with Taylor Heinicke under center. And we all know that there's this magic dust with Taylor Heinicke, and eventually that shit runs out. Because when you're a backup in this league, you're only allowed to back up for so long and play like a starter for so long before you morph back in to a backup, right? At some point, that carriage is going to turn back into a pumpkin, right? At some point, that backup quarterback that's performing like a grade A starter, at some point, he's going to morph back into the backup quarterback that he truly is. And that's what always happened during those streaks. For one way or another, you know, maybe it's the team around him, guys are getting injured, whatever. You can make excuses, but Heinicke is who he is. Sam Howell isn't Taylor Heinicke. He's way better. He's a starting quarterback in this league, and that could be the difference this year. That streak that we always go on, and then it falls off the damn table. We fall off the face of the NFL earth at the end of the season, losing to teams like Cleveland and losing to teams we have no business losing to at the end of seasons, or, you know, the season just bottoming out after getting back to 500 or over 500. And maybe that's different this year because you actually have a quarterback. Maybe. Just maybe. It's different this time. Just having a quarterback, we would have beaten Cleveland last year. So there is a chance, but it's a small one. Because, one, this team has to make it to the playoffs, and I don't see a playoff team right now with this group. Now, mind you, the back end of the NFC is crazy. We're the first team out. We talked about this yesterday. And I'm not going to start doing the whole playoff scenario thing until we get a little bit deeper. Once we get to Thanksgiving, then we pull that out every week and we start going through it. We're not there yet because I don't even want to have that conversation and exercise in futility unless we're actually in the mix. We could get to Thanksgiving and we could be losers of 3 out of our last 4. We could lose this game, or we could be losers of 2 out of our last 3 going into the Thanksgiving game, right? You could lose this game, beat the Giants, lose to Dallas, and then all of a sudden, what are we talking about? You know, you're nowhere near the playoffs at that point, more likely than not. Then you got a date with the Dolphins, probably sending you into your bye with losers of 3 out of your last 4. So what are we talking about? Like, we'll have that conversation when we get to Thanksgiving and we look up and we're at 500 at 6-6, or we get to Thanksgiving and we're 5-7 and we're right there in the mix, you know. Or you beat the Dolphins somehow, some way, and you get to that bye and you're 6-7, right? And you're like, okay, we're right there. You know, you look around and at the Minnesotas and the Atlantas, and you know, these other teams, the Saints, whomever's not winning that NFC South. You got to look at the other two teams. Tampa Bay, you know, they've fallen on hard times here of late, but I'm not willing to count them out yet. You know, and so you look around at the rest of the conference and you look at the rest of these teams. The Rams, I think they're cooked, right? But again, are you willing to count them out? I don't know. You know, we'll see what happens. But here's what I do know. You're not going to get in because everybody else sucks and can't win football games. You want to get in, you're going to have to earn your way in. I'm not sure this team can do it. And with this staff, are you confident in this staff's ability to get them ready to beat teams like San Francisco, like Miami, like the Jets with Aaron Rodgers under center, the Cowboys twice, the Seattle Seahawks on the road? Like, do you trust this group to get these guys ready? I don't. We may sneak one of those games because that's what this staff has done over the first 3 years of their tenure. They sneak a game or two that they have no business winning. But we're not winning all of those games. We're not winning most of those games. And there may be a letdown still waiting around the corner. The Giants game, I don't see how we lose to the Giants. With no Daniel Jones, no Tyrod Taylor, no Darren Waller, I don't see how we lose to the Giants. If Danny DeVito is their quarterback, we should be able to take care of business there. But I could see us going to L.A. and losing to the Rams and some bullshit like that. Why not? why not? Especially if there's a healthy Matthew Stafford, I can see him carving us up. Cooper Kupp going for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Puka Nacua complimenting him with 97 yards and a touchdown. I could see them, you know, scoring 28, 31 points on our ass and beating us. It's an uncomfortable conversation because we want change. But what if? If is a big 2-letter word. But what if? I don't see it happening. So it's unreasonable to me. It's unreasonable because I don't see us winning 5 more games this season. Which is what I think it's going to take. You're going to have to win 9 games to get to the 7th seed. I believe that. It's just too many teams hovering around that neighborhood that one of them isn't going to get to 9. But a huge step in that direction is Sunday against Seattle. You beat the Seahawks, and all of a sudden, you're right there with Seattle. Like, now we're looking at their spot. Not only are we looking to get in, we're looking at their spot and saying, hey, let me get that. You don't know what to do with that. Let me have that. This is where Seattle's supposed to separate themselves from the back end of the wild card. Those teams vying for the 7th spot. If you're Seattle, your message is, hey, let's separate ourselves from the little sisters of the poor. Because it's us and Dallas that are supposed to be the 2 wild cards that are givens. You lose to Washington, and now Washington's entering into that conversation with you. We don't want any company here. We got Dallas. That's enough. Let's use a firm stiff arm to keep Washington and the Vikings and the rest of those teams at bay, away from us where they belong. Let them fight down there for number 7. We don't want any company up here fighting for 5 and 6. It's just us in Dallas. I'm going to say this one last time because this is what I firmly believe. I thought before the season started, EB was going to come in here and wave some magical wand from Kansas City and that this team was going to play this incredible football. And I had my doubts about the defense before the season started, but I said, Ron's going to make the playoffs. And that playoff berth was going to grant him another year. He's got 1 more year on his contract anyway. And they were going to let it play out. And next year, he was going to make that run, that 2015 Panthers run. He's going to make that run next year with a quarterback finally in tow, with the experience that was necessary to make the run. And he was going to solidify his spot and be here for a little while. And that was begrudgingly I made that. I was a Ron Rivera fan, but I've already told you, he's done all that I feel like he can do for this organization. And when he's gone, I'm going to stand at attention and I'm going to salute him. Job well done. Thank you for your service. Okay? At the end of the day, I'm ready for a change. I thought that they would get it done this year. They're not going to. You can't lose to the Bears and the Giants and still feel like this group can get it done. And some things might have changed. The offensive line may be better, yada, 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 this, that, and the third. You missed your window of opportunity. By losing those 2 games, you put yourself in a position where you had to trade Montez Sweat and Chase Young. This team is not better than it was 2 weeks ago. Any hopes and aspirations of winning against teams like Philadelphia, when you traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young, those sort of went out the window. I think we can compete offensively with those. We can't stop those teams defensively now. It just is what it is. So what I thought was going to happen changed drastically once we lost to Chicago. I've never been back on that roller coaster of, hey, we can still do this with Ronald this year and then he'll be back next year. No. That died when we lost by 20 points and gave up 40 to the Bears, a winless team at the time. It's over. And I think that's what the Harris group thinks too. It's over. They're going to have to convince them that it's not over by not only making it to the playoffs, but winning a game. I think one game brings them back. One win gets them back in the saddle with another opportunity. Anything less than that, just getting to the playoffs, I think they're still fired. What says you? Leave it down in the comment section. Let's move on to in other news. And man, what a game between the Eagles and the Cowboys on Sunday. We'll talk about that. The Giants are just awful. We'll talk about that. We'll go around the NFC East here in a second. But before we do that, I want to talk about Sam Howell. And you know what it is, NHO. You know how we do it. You know how I've been doing it. And I'm proud to say that I was one of the first. I'm not the first. I'm not going to sit here and beat my chest and declare that I was the first guy in on Sam Howell, because I wasn't. There were a lot of you who wanted to see Sam last year. I wanted no parts of Sam playing early last season. It was always, hey, if we trying to make something of this season, you can't turn to a rookie quarterback at this juncture. Behind this offensive line, no. Or that offensive line, rather. No, I'm not willing to risk the young fella behind that offensive line that we had with Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner and the likes of that garbage. No, thank you. Put in Taylor Heineke. You know, for Scott Turner's offense, he knows it, front and back. He'll get rid of the football. Put in Heineke. And it worked, right? He gave us a shot. So some of you wanted to see Sam last year. I didn't. I was good with him learning and getting ready whenever that opportunity presented itself, and it did in Week 18. Shout out to Taylor Heineke once again for getting Sam that opportunity in Week 18, because who knows where we would be if Heineke just accepted the starting role in Week 18 and we never got to see Sam Howell and they never got to see what he could do in an actual NFL game and was able to ride that wave into next season. Who knows? Ronald might have tried to go out and get another veteran quarterback instead. Maybe Jacoby Brissett would be starting right now instead of Sam Howell. Who knows? The tomfoolery that we've dealt with at the quarterback position has been mind-numbing at this point. But here we are, 9 weeks in. Sam Howell has a 5-5 record as a starter. And we're 4-5 this season. And he's getting better and better and better. And the best is still yet to come. But I've been all along saying this guy has immense talent. He can do it. This guy is it. We got our guy, right? We finally found what we've been looking for all these years, and we don't have to keep searching, right? We got it. Just how good is Sam Howell anyway? Here's some more empirical data. Here's further proof that we got our guy. Let's take a look at some of this information that was dropped on us from the team after Sunday's game. So I just want to focus in on the three bullets in the middle. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullets. I want to focus in on the final 4 bullets, right? The first 2 are cool. Quarterback Sam Howell completed 29 of 45 passes for 325, a touchdown and an interception. He added 5 carries, 26 yards, including a career-long 24-yard rush. That's cool, right? But we already knew that, okay? Howell's 24-yard rush came on a 3rd and 23. It was the longest third down conversion by Washington since 2013. We already knew that, you know. We knew that on Sunday. Here's where shit gets really intriguing, and you go, wow. It sort of puts things in its proper perspective. Howell eclipsed 2,500 yards passing, becoming the first quarterback in franchise history to reach that feat in his first career 10 games. So think about all the quarterbacks that have played for this illustrious organization and the history that we have at the quarterback position. Now, I know it hasn't been great over the last 35, pushing 40 years, but just think about all the guys that came before Sam. And I get it, you know, Sonny Jurgensen, you know, Sammy Baugh and those guys played in eras that weren't necessarily passer friendly, but they still hold a lot of franchise records to this day, right? So, and then, you know, again, you don't have to like Kirk Cousins, but he set a ton of records when he got here. Robert Griffin III turned in one of the greatest rookie seasons that we've ever seen from a quarterback, and he only threw for 3,200 yards that season. Sam's already at 2,500 with 8 games to go. He's going to smash that. Sam's going to throw for over 4,000 yards this season, folks. Additionally, he is 12th. He's the 12th quarterback all time to surpass the milestone in 10 games, 10 or less career games, and the first to do it since Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert in 2020. I want you to keep those 2 names in mind and how we regard those 2 quarterbacks in NFL circles right now. Those 2 names are going to come up again, all right? And I just need you to understand, Joe Burrow is one of the, if not the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Mahomes is number 1. I think there's not many people that would debate that. If you're a Bengals fan, you may be willing to argue that Joe Burrow is better than Mahomes. He doesn't have the hardware that Mahomes has, but he's beaten Mahomes. He's got Mahomes' number, and he's done it in Arrowhead. It's not like, oh, okay, he's only done it in Cincinnati. No, he's gone in the playoffs, in the AFC Championship game. He's gone to Arrowhead and beaten Patrick Mahomes before. He just doesn't have a Super Bowl yet. But once he gets one, there's a conversation that starts to happen. Then it turns into Manning versus Brady, right? That'll be our new version of that. Burrow versus Mahomes. He's that good. Herbert, he's got a ways to go, but we still view him as one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Sam is being mentioned in that conversation right now with how he started his career. Now, not you know, he's in that conversation and when we start ranking the quarterbacks, but he's getting into that conversation where these guys were at this juncture of their careers after 10 starts. Okay. So only 12 quarterbacks have eclipsed 2,500 passing yards in their first 10 starts. Sam is one of them. And the last 2 to do it, it wasn't anybody from this 2021 class. It wasn't Trevor Lawrence. It wasn't any of those guys, right? Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert were the last 2 to do it. Sam's added his name to that list. Howell joins Mark Rypien and Kirk Cousins as the only Washington quarterbacks to record 3 games of 300-plus yards passing in their first 10 career games. Again, those are the 2 names. If you're going to pull names out of your ass of quarterbacks that haven't been ass over the last 35 years of this organization's history, those are the 2 names. You want to throw Brad Johnson in there? Go ahead. Knock yourself out. Brad Johnson only did it 1 year. And if you're going to say, well, Mark Rypien only did it, you know, in 1 year, essentially, when he was actually really good, well, he won a Super Bowl too. So there's that. So you're allowed to bring up Mark Rypien. You know, he's immortalized forever because he won a Super Bowl. You know, Brad Johnson had a great year, 4,000 yards passing in 99. It was a great year, but He only did it once, right? And he didn't win anything. Rippon did. And Kirk did it multiple times, right? So Howell joins the only two quarterbacks worth a damn over the last 35 years, essentially, worth mentioning. Again, if you want to throw in Brad Johnson, you want to throw in Robert Griffin III, knock yourself out. I'm not. These are the two names right here. Kirk Cousins, Mark Rippon. Rippon's got the hardware. Kirk Cousins has got the longevity. He's got the consistency. Nobody else, whether it's Griffin or Johnson or whomever you want to name, none of those guys have either one of those things right there. The hardware or the longevity, the consistency. So, Sam, for the first time in his career, Howell recorded 300 plus passing yards in consecutive games. And we can add to that Washington, for the first time since 2020, had back-to-back 400-yard total yardage games. So Howell's growth is elevating this offense big time, right? And then this is another one that kind of just jumps out at you, right? Howell's 246 completions rank third all time. Third all time through 10 career games, trailing only Justin Herbert's 269 and Joe Burrow's 264. There's those two names again. There's those two names again. When we talk about the next era of quarterbacks ushering in that new age of quarterback play, two of the names that are going to be brought up are Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Here's our guy being mentioned with those same two names yet again. It's not a coincidence, folks. Now, I will say that the reason he's up there third all time in completions, and this is a fair, critique of this if you want to go that route. Again, I'm glass half full. I'm just going to tell you my guy's out here slinging that bitch. But if you want to go glass half empty, well, EB's got the dude throwing the ball 45 times a game. Touche. You got me. My hands are up. Okay. I mean, of course he's going to have all these completions. He's throwing it a bunch, but he could be throwing it a bunch and not completing passes. He could be Zach Wilson, right? And having a completion percentage in the toilet. You can throw it 45 times. You're not guaranteed to complete 33 of them. You can throw it 45 times and not complete 29. And honestly, 29 isn't a great number when you throw it 45 times. It's not as good as we know Sam can be. But he had drops. We recall the game. There were drops in there. And there were opportunities that he missed himself. But we've also seen games where he's thrown it, 50 times and he completed like 39 of them. I think that was the number against the Bears, like 39 of 50. Are you kidding me? Whatever it was against the Bears, 39 of 52 or some craziness. We saw the Eagles game last week. What was that number? It was a high completion percentage. A lot of attempts, high completion percentage. So just because and again, we've watched these games, you don't get to 2,500 yards passing on dink and donkers, right? And we're not catching screens and guys running for 67-yard touchdowns. That's not what this offense has been, okay? He's pushing the football vertically down the field. He's completing some big chunk plays down the field. So for him to be in this same conversation with Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow yet again after 10 games speaks volumes on where he potentially is heading, where the trajectory is heading, right? And I also want you to keep in mind, this number is probably higher, the completions, if Scott Turner doesn't put the training wheels on this kid in his first start. When we wanted him, and who knows what would have happened. He might have soiled himself if Scott Turner had let him throw it more against Dallas. But all in all, to be in this conversation with these two quarterbacks in particular, who we hold in high regard in the NFL right now, says a lot about where Sam Howell potentially is heading. So just how good has Sam Howell been? Damn good. So good, in fact, that he's mentioned with two of the best young quarterbacks in the league consistently through his first 10 starts. And we know wins aren't a quarterback stat, right? But he's been doing that too. He's 5-5 with what we feel like is inferior coaching and a roster that's solid, but not earth-shattering. and an offensive line that they haven't invested enough into. And he's still doing what he's done to this point. So I'd say touche. Two mother effing shay. We got ourselves one. If nothing else, we got ourselves a QB. So I just want to talk about the NFC East real quick and then we get out of here. What a game between Philadelphia and Dallas. First of all, let me talk to the fans a second. Let me talk to the fan base real quick, because I got a lot of hell from you guys about me rooting for Dallas during this. I can't be here. You're rooting for Dallas. I'm out. Okay, I'm not gonna lecture you. I'm not gonna wag my finger at you. That's a fair point, and I don't do this very often. Okay, money is on the line here. I picked Dallas in my weekly pick'em pool. I picked Dallas in my winners and losers league. I needed the win. Okay, spare me. Okay, I'm sorry. I hate Dallas just as much as you do. Okay, trust me, this isn't something I make a habit of. But I thought they could go into Philadelphia and win. I picked them to do so. I needed the dub. I didn't get it, so it is what it is. But again, spare me. I'm sorry. A lot of you guys were killing me, and I get it. That said, and I just needed to explain myself, okay? That said, look, money trumps all of that shit that you guys are talking about. Just to know, so you understand. Me putting money in my pockets trumps rooting for the enemy. If I pick them to win, because I don't pick with my heart, I pick with my head. So I don't give a shit how much I hate Dallas. If I think they're going to win, I'm picking Dallas. I don't care how much I hate Philadelphia. If I think they're going to win, I'm going to pick them. And if I pick them, unfortunately, I have to root for them. Anyway, just like this is why I don't play fantasy football. Because I was in a conundrum in whatever week it was that the Eagles lost to the Jets. I picked the Eagles to win in my survivor pool, which means of all the games that week, I care about that game the most. Because if I lose, I'm eliminated. And the Eagles are out here struggling, and I got these conflicting emotions that I'm going through. On one hand, I'm like, beat their ass, Jets. Come on, finish the job. And on the other hand, I'm like, come on, Jalen Hurts, you stinking bastard. Find a way to win this game. And I'm going back and forth. And when the game was over, and the Eagles lost, and I was eliminated, as bad as I wanted to be mad, a huge part of me was like, hell yeah. I'm glad those bitches lost, right? Even if it was at my expense. So I just need you guys to know my hatred still runs deep for every team in this division. And I'm not rooting for anybody. That particular game, that particular week, I needed the Cowboys to win. It's as simple as that. Don't read into it any more than that. Anyway, that's a hell of a football game. Don't you want to be a part of some of those? Like we were last year with the Giants on Sunday Night Football. I thought that was a well-played game, and I thought it was... Look, the NFC East, even though record-wise we aren't the best division in football right now, the AFC North is just killing it. Everybody's 5-3 or better. Like, there isn't a division even remotely close to that division right now. The Ravens are 7-2, and every other team, the Steelers, the Bengals, and the Browns are all 5-3. They're killing it, but... And I think that division plays excellent football against one another, right? But when the NFC East gets together and these teams do battle, it looks like that, you know? When we played the Eagles twice this year, it looked like that. It didn't feel like that because we didn't do our part, right? The first one, for us at least, I don't know if the Eagles fans realize it, because when I said it to them, you know, they were kind of flummoxed. When I said the first game we played you guys this season was for first place in the division. You were undefeated at 3-0, and we were 2-1. Had we beaten you, we would have both been 3-1, and we would have owned the tiebreaker because we just beat you, and we would have been in first place. They didn't realize that because they don't see us as a threat, right? So they weren't even thinking that way. That was us making that game that big, right? But Eagles fans acknowledge that Dallas is their chief competition in the division, so that game rose to that level. And boy, did it meet the expectations that were set on it. Dallas had no business losing that game. You know, we could get into the particulars of what happened there. Dak can't step out of bounds on that 2-point conversion. You could argue that Schoonmaker has to find a way to get in the end zone. He was being tackled before he even touched the football. Like, his knees were down because Reed Blankenship was tackling the man before he even touched the ball, right? If there's any, real gripe there, it's Ferguson, the tight end that's supposed to be running the pick. You can't run out of the way of the guy. You're running a route. You stay on your path, running your route, and if that guy slams into you, that's his problem, not yours. Don't avoid him and let him get to the tight end. The point of you running the slant there and having a slant-flat combo is that you're going to run interference and your guy's going to come wide open for the touchdown. He moves out of the way. Blankenship's able to go underneath, get straight to Schoonmaker, and get him down before he gets into the end zone. But Dak can't take a sack when he took that sack. And I know Terrence Steele was getting his ass whooped. And if you're a Dallas fan, Terrence Steele is stealing money, okay? His last name shouldn't be spelled S-T-E-E-L-E. It should be S-T-E-A-L because he's Terrence Steele, as in stealing money. He got his ass whooped on Sunday. And when they needed him the most, he gave it up. However, that wasn't immediate pressure on that final sack. Dak had enough time to see the rush coming and try to avoid it. There's no avoiding this, bro. Throw that bitch out of the back of the end zone. You are supposed to get 4 attempts at the end zone. You put yourself in this position to get 4 attempts at the end zone. You can't get 2 because you take a sack. I think they ended up getting 3. 2, really, because he got sacked on 1. They threw the deep ball, and then he got the one to CeeDee Lamb with the last play of the game. And personally, they had 5 seconds left. I would have thrown it to CeeDee Lamb on like a 8-yard gain because the Eagles were playing 50 yards off. They were playing essentially at the goal line. I would have run up 7 yards. I would have threw it to him right off the line of scrimmage, had CeeDee Lamb run up 8, 9, 10 yards as fast as he can, run out of bounds with 1 second left because there was nobody around. You would have had time. Hike the ball, throw it to CD, run 5. Even if it's only 5 or 6 yards, you're that much closer. You're making it that much tougher for Philadelphia to have to defend it. Now you can actually run a real play because you're that much closer to the end zone. But that's me. Anyway, their head coach is just as dumbfounded as ours is, right? He's just as goofy as Ron is. The first possession of the game, Jalen Hurts' knee is down on that scramble. It should have been 4th and 3. They're not going to do a brotherly shove on 4th and 3. 4th and 1, 1.5. Yeah, they're going to go for it because you can't stop it. But they're not getting 3 yards on a brotherly shove. Okay? So they would have punted. And then they don't score on the opening possession of the game. And it's not like the Eagles rushed up to the line of scrimmage and forced McCarthy to have to make a quick decision without proper information. They went up to the line of scrimmage. They barked out fake cadences. They went all the way down to 3 seconds on the play clock and then snapped the ball and went for it. He had ample time to say, you know what? His knee was down. This is not 4th and 1. It's 4th and 3. Let's see what happens if we force them. He's going to punt. What do you mean? Anyway, hell of a football game. This division is awesome. I just love when we get together. Thanksgiving's going to be fun because we're not afraid of Dallas. And I think Sam is on a mission to prove to everybody. And that's the last time he'll be on national television. Okay. We've had our 2 primetime games already, or 1, right, against the Bears. Didn't go so well for us. This is his opportunity. I think people are taking notice about how good he is. I'm starting to hear the national media sink their teeth into Sam like, hey, I think this guy's the real deal out here. This is his opportunity on Thanksgiving to prove to everybody once and for all, hey, y'all don't want the smoke out here because it's different now because they got a guy. And I'm him. And it's NHL. If you don't know, order. Now you know. And it's NHL. So I look forward to that game on Thanksgiving. It's going to be a ton of fun. But, man, that game was awesome. And then you go to the Giants. And so now the Eagles are 8-1. They're on their bye week. The Cowboys are now 5-3. And a lot of fans are like, they're within striking distance, Louie T. Look at Dallas. They're not that far away from us. We can reach out and touch them. All we got to do is beat Seattle, then beat the Giants, and then look at them. They're right there. We can grab them. And I'm like, that sounds good. I'm not buying what you're selling, though. Okay? They're going to destroy the Giants on Sunday. And whatever's left of the Giants, we're going to dispose of it on the following Sunday, right? I'm confident. I feel like the Giants game, the first loss, 14-7, was the turning point. If this season does go in the right direction, either way, honestly, no matter what happens the remainder of the season, for EB and Sam, I think that was a turning point game. That was the game where they realized we have to change some shit. Sam, we're going to have to put more on your plate. You're going to have more control at the line of scrimmage. And EB, I think he realized, going to have the screen game be more prevalent. Going to have the quick game be more prevalent. And I'm also going to have to run the football a little bit more. There's no excuses not to. That game changed everything. And we've seen a more refined, a more balanced, and a more confident and competent EB since then. I really feel that way. And again, it does coincide with the offensive line changes. Okay, don't want to dismiss that. The Giants are horrible. I told you they didn't stand a chance against the Raiders with Antonio Pierce as the new head coach. You know, anytime you get an interim, I don't know how that situation in Vegas is going to go, but I mean, they didn't stand a chance. They were going to get run in that game, and they did. Right? Saw that coming a mile away, but Daniel Jones being out for the season, didn't see that coming. Torn ACL, that's been confirmed. So Tyrod's on IR. Daniel Jones' season is over. Maybe his Giants career is over at this point. And now Danny DeVito, and I know his name is Tommy. I don't care. He's Danny DeVito. He stinks. Danny DeVito is their quarterback the remainder of the season, unless they decide to do something outside of the organization. Danny DeVito is who they're moving forward with. He stinks. No, he doesn't stink. He stinks. And I told Giants fans this. Yeah, you may have beaten us, but I feel for you. Like Shaka Khan, I feel for you. Your QBs are doo-doo. I said, you're going to have to watch this shit the rest of the year. Whether it's Tyrod Taylor or it's Daniel Jones or it's Danny DeVito, you got to watch this shit the rest of the year. I don't. Yeah, you beat us. I still have Sam Howell and I still have hope. You don't. And what I hope ultimately happens for them, and I don't know what's going to... They're the 4th pick overall right now after losing to the Raiders. They're going to be in a position to draft a quarterback. There's no way they're going to win a bunch of games this season. They may have 1 or 2 more in them. But they're going to end up with a top 5 pick more likely than not. And so, even if it's not Caleb Williams, you know, and they've positioned themselves to get Caleb Williams because of the draft capital they added in the deal with Leonard Williams. Now they have that extra 2nd round pick. They could conceivably, and then you're asking a team to move backwards, but it's not that far. So if I give you my 2 seconds and I swap first with you, that's a good deal, right? Because you're only moving back 2 or 3 spots. If you're, say, Chicago, you got because Arizona is going to be, right now, they're number 1, and I don't know if they're going to win any more games. Carolina's not winning another game this season. I've already told you that. They're done. They got their 1 out of the way, so they're not, 0-17. They're a 1-16 ball club. Arizona Kyler Murray's coming back. I think the Bears are going to have the number 1 overall pick. They're going to have another decision to make. Just like they had one last year, they're going to have a decision to make again. This time it's not as a big of a decision because they got 2 picks in the first. Their pick is going to suck too. So they're going to have 2 picks in the top 5 again. Here's the thing though. Just like last year, they're going to have to make a decision. Do we want to upgrade the quarterback position or do we believe in Justin Fields? Fields needs to come back. He needs to be healthy and he needs to play well, or else if I'm Ryan Poles, their GM, I gotta go with Caleb Williams or I gotta go with Drake May. I gotta go with a guy that I think, first of all, it's my guy. Ryan Poles inherited Justin Fields. He did not make that selection. The last regime did. So if you don't believe in him, this is the time to get out of that business, right? Because you're not going to get a quarterback prospect that's going to be better in the next 3, 4, 5 years, more likely than not. It's better than Caleb Williams. So what do you do there? If you're the Giants, you probably say, hey, you got Justin Fields. You don't want to take a quarterback. Let me get to number 1 and get Caleb Williams. They're in a position to do that. So whether you hate the Giants, don't want to see them improve, they're going to get better at the quarterback position next year. I would prefer it to be Drake May. because he's got somewhat of a turnover issue, I think, personally. He looks the part, but I think he's also a guy that will turn it over. Whereas Caleb Williams, I don't think has necessarily that same issue. He's a really good quarterback, and he's going to be good, I think, in the NFL. But I don't think he's as good as everybody says. I don't think he's going to be this generational talent. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback, though. Doesn't matter. I'm not afraid of the Giants. Whether Caleb Williams or Drake May or Michael Penix Jr. is their quarterback, I don't give a shit. I want to continue to watch the Giants rot. And I'm going to laugh every step of the way. They suck ass. And I'm going to enjoy their misery. And I hope we beat them by 50 next week. The goal is to embarrass, emasculate, like Dallas is going to do to them. I want to do the same thing. I want a 40 spot on those boys. At home, I want to have a party on Sunday next week at home. We haven't been home in 2 weeks, right? We play a lot of road games of late, right? We've only been home once in the last 5 weeks. We played on the road at Philadelphia, on the road at Atlanta, on the road at Philadelphia. We came home for one game, right? And then and that was what? Wait, Philadelphia, and then on the road at New England. That's what it was. Philadelphia, on the road at New England. Before that, it was at the Giants, at Atlanta, and then it was home for Philadelphia, right? So we've been at home one time in the last 5 weeks after the Seattle game, right? We had 4 out of 5 on the road. At the Giants, at the Falcons, home for Philadelphia, at New England, at Seattle. We would have gone 4 of our last 5 on the road. That's going to be some good home cooking right there. Come home, sleep in your own bed, and beat the shit out of the Giants. That's what I'm looking to do. I'm talking about murder these dudes. I want to have some fun at their expense. And if we can't, I'm going to be pissed off. Seriously. But we got to get through this game against Seattle first before we can start talking about that. But boy, are they bad. They're now 2-7 on the season, I believe. They haven't had their bye yet, I don't think. So I think they're now 2-7 because after beating us, they had this idea that, hey, we could turn our season around. And they had the Jets right there, right? Right on the ropes. And if they beat the Jets, all of a sudden, they would have been, what, 3-5? Right? And then they would have had the Raiders, and then they would have been playing us again. They would have been looking like, hey, we could turn this shit around. Not exactly. They're either 2-6 if they've had their bye. I don't think they have. Or they're 2-7. Either way, they stink. They suck ass. Oh, no, they suck again. I was talking to Bad Dog the other day. Me and him were texting in our group text. And he was talking to me about the draft. And I was like, bro, I don't have those conversations over here. We still have a season to attend to. He's like, yeah, I remember those days. What it used to be like. And then I told him, and I said in my Archie and Edith Bunker voice, those were the days. Oh, I don't envy them. I do not envy them. Anyway, I've talked your head off today for far too long. I apologize. This episode was way longer than it needed to be, but I was having fun. Anyway, leave it down in the comment section. I know you've probably got a ton to say about all the things that I've said today. I look forward to reading it. Until next time, you guys know what it is. Post up. Take command. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap. Hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone.